Good night, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Infocus. Now, Papua New Guinea in the past 10 years has embarked on a much-needed digital transformation. This is reflected through the following key milestone policies: the Digital Government Act of 2022, the Digital Government Plan 2023 to 2027, and the National Cybersecurity Policy 2021. Joining me for discussions tonight, we have the PNG ICT Cluster representative and president for the PNG Cybersecurity, Defense and Intelligence Association, Inc., Mr. Solomon Wesley Sua. Solomon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, viewers. Good to be back on the Infocus, another Infocus show.
Okay. Now, firstly, Solomon, can you tell us a bit about the PNG Digital ICT Cluster?
PNG ICT Cluster is a non-profit association. It is like the CPA of the accountants in PNG. It is similar to the Institute of Engineers for PNG, where all the professional engineers are affiliated. So it is a non-profit organization for the PNG in terms of all the ICT members. At the moment, the ICT, especially the private sector, they don't have a voice in the industry. So PNG ICT Cluster is a body where all the ICT professionals come together, and at the same time, the government will look for and sort for ICT knowledge and expertise within the ICT cluster.
Now, under the Digital Government Act 2022, the government will be enforcing and implementing a cloud-first policy, a data governance standards, and using a whole-of-government delivery approach. These are quite technical terms, but can you give us in a layman terms what they are?
The Digital Government Act of 2022, at a nutshell, the Act encompasses about 8 sections, and there are parts to it, but I will touch on a few. That is in the part 2 of the Digital Government Act. It talks about all the administration of how the government is looking at the digital sector. So we have general administration. We have under that in section 9 of the Act, it talks about digital transformation officers. Like all the government agencies would have they call a DTO that is responsible for the transformation in that particular government agency or department. And then we have other things like the committees, the Public Service ICT Steering Committees, which covers in section 11 of the Act. And then we have the ICT audit committees. And then part 3 of that talks about the digital infrastructure of the Government Act. So it talks about government, section 22 talks about the private cloud. And then it talks about the government lease infrastructure, that's in section 25. And then in section 26, it talks about the private cloud infrastructure. So it's like the government is looking at all of government, meaning that everything that the country runs on must be on the cloud or must be powered by the technology. So this particular legislation that they passed in 2022 talks about all of that. So, and then we have things like the electronic data, we have things like the digital service and related matters, data privacy, all of that is all contained in that Act. So it is one of the, not really too detailed, but it is at a good starting point for a country like ours. So as we go along, they may broaden the scope and all that, but at the moment, the 8 sections there, they really drill down into how the government should go. So some of the policy, the directives they are on is like all of government must be on a cloud, or all of government must have a digital transformation officer, or they must comply to all of that. So in a nutshell, the Act is a very the basic legislation that the country should rely on to move forward as a nation, and as far as the digital transformation in the sector is concerned.
The key implementing agency, I would imagine, would be the Department of ICT. What capacity is the ICT cluster, which incorporates, as you said, ICT experts? To what extent will they be assisting the government in that endeavor?
PNG Digital ICT Cluster is is a body that the government is looking at to go to a place where it will go and get the expertise and solutions that it will need. What happened is that, like, let's say a country like Estonia, which you might ask a question later on that how the government is going, but Estonia, what they do is that they involve the private sector in terms of the providing the service that government envision in their own legislation and acts. So in the Digital Government Act 2022, the government has a plan, but to really achieve that, it needs the government needs the private sector to come in. So in the case of digital transformation, the government will need players in the ICT sector. And the only way the government is trying to do that is through the ICT cluster. So PNG ICT, Digital ICT Cluster is a critical member of the vision for the government as far as the policies and technologies are concerned. So Digital Government, Digital ICT Cluster is the place where the ICT and the Department of Communication and the government will go in to get the knowledge and expertise. Let's say I run a cybersecurity company. So Cybersecurity PNG Limited is my company. So in the event that the government want to engage a cybersecurity company, what it will do is that they won't come directly to me. Most of the time they will go to the ICT cluster. So because I'm a member of the PNG Digital ICT Cluster, then the ICT cluster will then engage my services. So for their sustainability, they might get the percentage of what I would be, let's say, charging the Department of ICT to provide probably some cybersecurity related services. So that's how the Digital ICT Cluster will function and operate in the country. So how it will sustain, they will charge a fee on what with private sector we will go. So that's where the government will go to Digital ICT Cluster to look for talents and services that are provided in the country by the private sector.
Thank you, Solomon. We now go for a quick break. When we return, we discuss the Digital Government Plan 2023 to 2027 and the cybersecurity policy. Welcome back to Infocus. Now, Solomon, the government recently launched the Digital Government Plan 2023 to 2027 and the Government Cloud Policy 2023, as well as the Department of ICT RFI Gov Cloud. Can you tell us a bit about these particular programs?
Thank you, Malcolm. the Government Cloud Policy 2023 and the ICT's request for information on the Gov Cloud. What that department is doing is that they want to know who is providing cloud solutions in the country or cloud services. Either it can be a private cloud, meaning that that cloud solution is hosted inside a server room in a let's say office or a government agency or department. The cloud is basically someone else's computer. It's like a huge computer. Like, let's say Microsoft is providing cloud services. They have about 7 football field sizes of data centers. It's like they pack these 20-foot containers with all the servers. So it's like when they say server, you must know that it's a cloud, it's a server or a computer owned by someone. It's like someone building a house and then they rent out rooms for others to lease it. So it's like Microsoft putting up a big, huge data center where so many computers are inside, and then they lease the computers out, the services out. Instead of the actual app, they lease the storage services out and say that you can have your server here, you can have. So it is, cloud basically means someone else's computer sitting somewhere, but they are provisioning the services to their clients on a subscription basis. So what the government is doing under the government cloud policy is that as much as possible, they want people to go to the cloud and embrace what the cloud services are offering. So one thing is that you don't have the hardware to worry about when it comes to cloud computing, or you don't have the server purchase, and we IT administrators and IT support staff, we normally sleep over in the server room whenever there's a server crash. All these kind of headaches, they're putting it away. Now that it is like a utility. Edaranum brings the water from, let's say, Sogari. And then we really don't care how Edaranum brings the water to the city, what the treatments they're doing at Mount Eriama, for instance. All we want is that we want to pay the bills and use the water. Cloud computing is like that. We don't worry about whoever owns the server, whoever is servicing the server. All we want is that I pay a service provider, something and I want my emails up all the time. I don't want it to go down. So that's where cloud policy is coming in. So what government is doing is that as much as possible to cut down the cost and redundant services and same services are being replicated across the government ecosystem. What they're doing is that they're saying that we must go to the cloud, and as much as possible, whatever application you want to put in the cloud, you put it there. Whatever things that are sensitive and you don't want to put it in the cloud, you can have it in your server room. But cloud first, meaning that as much as possible, we must go to the cloud and utilize those services. And that's where the global world is going, so we must follow suit. If we try to run our own servers and stay back, then we might miss on the global transformation that is happening. So cloud is basically someone's computer, we lease out and we must go there, and then that has a lot of benefits like cut down on cost and all other related expenses that at the moment government could be paying a lot of money on that.
Another critical policy would be the Cybersecurity Policy 2016. How critical is it to have such a policy for Papua New Guinea government as well as the broader industry as a whole?
You rightly pointed out, cybersecurity is one of the, right now is kind of the elephant in the room that we really don't put a lot of emphasis on. So we can do our digital transformation, we can put on services, we can go to the cloud, we can do all that thing, but at the same time, when we go to the cloud, when we expose ourselves to the cloud, what happens is that then when people like cyber criminals who would be interested in our data, who would be interested in our government infrastructures or critical infrastructures. So the cybersecurity policies they are putting in, the first one is the Cyber Crime Code Act of 2016. And then follow that, now we don't have a specific legislation for cybersecurity alone, but what the department is doing and based on what information and policy papers they're putting out, they're working on the Cybersecurity Act. At the moment, we only have the Digital Government Act of 2022, but we don't have any act that is specific to the cybersecurity. So the new legislation, this policy will definitely turn into a bill or an act, just like what the digital the government digital transformation policy then turn into an act. Cybersecurity policy will then definitely turn into an act. So in that, it will cover all the aspects of cybersecurity. If the government department want to go to the cloud, then what must they do? The DTOs, the digital transformation officers, what qualifications they must have, or what are the skills they have, because at the end of the day, they must protect those infrastructures that we are exposing to the cloud or internet. So things like the election databases or the electoral voting systems or the e-health or all of that, now that government saying that all of us must go to the cloud, cybersecurity is there. So the cybersecurity policy will play a very key role. So from the industry and from the as a player in the industry and in the sector, what the government can do is that they can quickly support the department and turn that cybersecurity policy into an actual act. And then when it comes to parliament voting and all that, as the industry, what we're saying is that they must take a bipartisan approach, and when the legislation for that comes to the floor of parliament, they must quickly, turn that into act, because that is very critical for the protection of our critical infrastructures. Now that government is coming up with policies that they want to go to the cloud, we support that, but at the same time, the laws must be quickly put in to protect and guide us as to how we go about this.
Thank you, Solomon. We now go for a quick break. When we return, we discuss how the digital government plans and policies fit into the medium-term development plan 4. Welcome back to Infocus. Still in the studio with me, we have Mr. Solomon Wesley Sua. Now, Solomon, what are some of the current and ongoing challenges that is hampering the government's digitalization plans? As far as
for the lead agencies like the Department of ICT and other players in the industry, funding is one problem. But one thing we realize in the sector is that the government is very supportive of what the transformation that is happening, and they see that there's trends are going. So now the funding and all this, they are actually making fundings and all that available on time, and they are very supportive of the Department of ICT in what they're running. So the minister and the secretary, what they're doing, the government is very supportive. That used to be a challenge, but now we see that that's a big improvement in what the government is doing, and now the government realized that ICT is a major player. So that used to be like a hiccup or a problem or issue there, but right now the government is improving on that, so I don't see that as any other problem anymore. But another thing that the government as a department and industry would face is that the lack of expertise within their own department. So that's where the idea of digital transformation officers would come in. So it's like they would have digital transformation officers in all the government departments, in all the government agencies, who would be the player, who would be driving this thing at their own individual department and agency levels, at the national, sub-national, and at the district level. So I think that's another challenge that the department would have, is that to really push and for DTOs to be in all the sectors. For the private sector, our huge challenge is that funding as well. Some of these innovations come in and we need funding and support from the government. So now that Department of ICT is partnering with Digital ICT Cluster, we see like a light at the end of a tunnel. So that is a big, we feel that we would benefit from that. But at the moment, the ICT sector, some could be paying taxes, some could be some players in the industry, but they are not getting things like tax incentives or any other benefits. So these are the challenges that the private sector has. But with the Digital ICT Cluster coming on board as a partner with the government through the Department of ICT, I think there's as I said, there's good things coming up, and that gives us a hope that we believe that we can drive digital transformation forward.
Now, Solomon, how does the Digital Government Act 2022, as well as the Digital Government Plan 2023 to 2027 as well, and the National Cybersecurity Policy, how do they all fit into the Medium-Term Development Plan 4, which was recently launched by the government?
Thank you, Malcolm. That's a very critical area you pointed out, and I'd love to say that of the, the PNG Medium-Term Development Plan 4 and 2023 to 2037 is they have they have 12 what they call SPAs. That's strategic priority areas. So interestingly, of the 12 strategic priority areas, 9 of them, digital transformation will directly impact. So when you look at strategies, 3 are like they are not ICT. The transformation may have may impact, but 9 of them. So it's like 9 out of 12 of the SPAs are directly can be directly influenced or affected by the digital transformation. So that is where the connection is now. So the government's the medium-term development plan. The government must now know that 12 of that. Of the 12, 9 of that is directly affected by the transformation that are happening. So now that tells us that the Department of ICT is now becoming like a strategic player in that. Because just imagine, of the 12, 9 is affected by digital transformation. So when you look at strategic economic investment, like that's SPA number 1. Number 3 is the quality and affordable healthcare. All right. Number 4 is the quality education and skilled human capital. SPA number 5 is rule of law and justice. SPA number 6 is national security. SPA number 7 is good governance and public service transformation. SPA number 8 is research, science and technology. SPA number 9 is digital government information and national data system. So when you look at all that, technology will directly impact them. And the other 3 are there which also can be impacted by the transformation, but these 9, the core ones that the government is running, are impacted. So I'll just take only one. Let's say the e-voting or e-health. These are under the SPA number 9, which talks about government transformations are happening. So when you look at that, this medium-term development plan is powered by IT or technology. So what the government is doing right. Now there massive funding coming into the Department of ICT. That must do that, because then the ICT department will then empower the cluster, PNG Digital ICT Cluster. And then you look at like all the industry players coming together, and then when we support the Department of ICT to run all these policies and legislations and what they're doing through the Digital ICT Cluster, and then that will directly impact the 9 out of 12 SPAs that the government has set up through the development plan number 4.
At a recent bilateral meeting, the Honorable Rembo Paeta, Minister for National Planning, Monitoring and Finance, he expressed the desire to seek a strategic partnership with the Republic of Estonia for the development of Papua New Guinea's digital government initiative as part of the delivery of the MTD4, which we touched on the previous question. What key lessons can we draw from Estonia's digitalization as well as the expertise and experience from the particular country?
Thank you, Malcolm. Estonia is a very interesting country. It's a European country that I think it is one of the first in the world to do like e-citizenship. They are giving citizens to like UK e-citizenship and other areas they're doing. So what they did was that they have also a robust ICT cluster platform. What the cluster did is the government, through the cluster, then find out within Estonia, let's say, ecosystem of technology providers and all this, who's providing what. So the government of Estonia then established this network where all the different players in each of the areas of ICT or digital transformation come in. So someone came up with the idea of e-voting. Someone came up with the ideas of all this. So when the government put all of that together, then they built a country that is one of the first country to go all digital, meaning that all the platforms like voting, identity, all of that goes digital. So it's like what the minister did is a right move as far as the industry in the country is concerned. It's a right move because Estonia, with its robust partnership with their own cluster, now the government is looking at ways that how can we replicate that into the country. So now the government has already established this PNG ICT Cluster connection there. So now with the Estonian model, I'm just looking at like, if the government is going that way, then I'm envisioning a strategic partnership where we from the private sector in the industry, we come in through the ICT cluster, like what Estonia did. And then through that, we provide the services like software development, cybersecurity, all these services. We come in and then through the ICT cluster, and then the government comes and we all meet at the digital ICT cluster. So, and then what Estonia did is through that, their own cluster, now they provision all the services. So it is, all the services are not built by the government. When you look at the government of Estonia, they are built by the private sector. So when the government collaborate and pull all of them together through the cluster, then they became the country what we know today. So what the government is doing, the minister did is a right move. So we can then replicate or see some of the areas that we can learn from them and then empower our ICT cluster, and then we players go and meet at all at the ICT cluster, and then the government come there, and then we see where we can leverage. So now PNG ICT cluster becomes the center point where we can see where we can help the government in terms of what services we provide. So let's say cybersecurity, software development, ICT, DevOps, or any other operations that we are doing, like private sector. So many are involved in so many things. So now that with the cluster, with the Estonian model, we can come together. So that's from the reports that I'm seeing and from where the government could be heading, that could be the area that they want to see how they can replicate that Estonian model in the country, and then they want to actually engage all the players through our own digital ICT cluster, and then empower the government to drive the agenda forward. So as I said earlier, 9 of the 12 the strategic areas SPAs is directly affected by ICT. So with this kind of connection and with other partnerships and collaborations, both domestically and internationally, what the government is trying to achieve is that they will achieve what, at the end of the day, everything must be cloud and cloud powered, and we are a country that is thriving in digital, and our digital economy is blooming. And then through the ICT cluster, then the government will achieve its goal of providing 500,000 SMEs by the year 2030. So all of that is happening through this one. So these partnerships we see is a very strategic, and not only with Estonia, but other partnerships across the Pacific and across the Europe and across the globe. The government is entering into is very good, because at the end of the day, it will power our SMEs, our MSMEs, our corporate companies, all of that. And through the digital ICT cluster, we can then support the government in achieving what the policies and plans that are going towards the digitization of the country's developments in terms of technology.
Now, an emerging technology is artificial intelligence. It's been quite, it's taken quite a very rapid rise in its development. Can you give us a perspective on this particular technology, it is emerging technology, and also the dangers and the opportunities that come with such a technology?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is something very, very interesting, and all the government agencies, academia, industry, they are already embracing. It is just like the Google search, but the difference between a Google search that we do, when you type in something like, I want to find out when did EMTV started broadcasting Infocus, or for instance, then the Google will give you a list of links to direct you to where the information is stored. Artificial intelligence, it's a similar search, but what it does is that it acts like a human person. So I'll give one example. There's a language model called ChatGTP. ChatGTP, what it does is that when you react with that one, it will not give so many information, but when you say, when did EMTV started broadcasting Infocus show, what it will do is that it will go and then find out, saying that, oh, they started this show. From this to that, this person was the host. From here to here, so it's like an interactive information it will give you. It won't like give you all the searches like what Google does. So artificial intelligence is basically mimicking or trying to imitate what a human person can think and act and respond. So we have to embrace this AI. It is here to help. It is another human person. It is another interactive solution that we can embrace to actually improve on what we're offering in terms of services, in terms of products and solutions we're offering to the country, because they are this is emerging technology that is already impacting lives across the globe.
Thank you, Solomon. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Before we go, I'd like to take this time to thank our special guest, Mr. Solomon Wesley Sua, President for PNG Cybersecurity, Defense and Intelligence Association, Inc., and member of the PNG ICT Cluster. Solomon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Malcolm. It is always a pleasure to be on the show and try to educate our country in what is happening in terms of especially cybersecurity. Great opportunity, and I appreciate you and EMTV for allowing me on the show. Thank you.
Okay. That's all the time we have for this edition of Infocus. Join us again next week, Monday, for another episode of Infocus. Till then, good night from us.